Hi, my name is GS Khalsa, and I work in the Storage and Availability Business Unit here at VMware, and I work in tech marketing focused on availability. And I'm here today to talk with you about stretch storage and Site Recovery Manager, and we'll tie some vSAN into this as well. So first off, what is stretch storage? What is a stretch cluster? And the whole idea with a stretch cluster is that we take what was focused on an individual site. So the whole idea of a vSphere cluster within an individual site, and we're going to extend that into a second site. And the way that we're going to do that is we're talking about extending the storage as well as the hosts and the networking, all so that the two sites basically behave like a single site from a cluster standpoint. But from an availability standpoint, we now have this ability to lose an entire site and recover those VMs at the other one. And the biggest part of that is from the storage, in the storage area. And what we're going to do from a storage standpoint is the storage is going to present itself to these hosts as a single piece of storage, but underneath it's going to be replicating and really synchronizing between those two sites in a way that allows it to present itself up as that single piece of storage. Now, what's the benefit that you get from that? So we have this idea of it operating as a single cluster. The benefit that you're going to get is you now, just like within a regular cluster, you now have the ability to vMotion VMs between sites. You have the ability to load balance between sites, because from the cluster level, the cluster's understanding is it's just going to treat this as a single site. So how does Site Recovery Manager fit into this? And first, maybe even better, is what is Site Recovery Manager? So just a real quick base understanding, what is Site Recovery Manager? Site Recovery Manager is a disaster recovery automation and orchestration solution. We take what were traditionally a manual disaster recovery plan and we turn it into an automated and orchestrated solution that allows it to be run easier, faster, with less involvement from administrators, and get your systems back up and running as quickly as possible. The biggest thing to me of Site Recovery Manager is it also provides the ability to non-disruptively test your disaster recovery plan, which is something that's usually lacking in most environments. Now, how do these two things fit together? Well, in the past they didn't. Prior to Site Recovery Manager 6.1, it was an either-or decision. We could either have Site Recovery Manager or we could have a stretch cluster, but we couldn't have both. And while there are benefits to both, as of Site Recovery Manager 6.1 and our ability to use them both together, now we get the benefits of both of them without losing any of those benefits. So now we have the benefit of the ability to vMotion VMs between these two sites. We have the benefit of having an orchestrated disaster recovery if we lose one of these sites. We have the ability to non-disruptively test our disaster recovery. So we get all of those benefits of the two different solutions combined into that single solution. Now, if we're talking about just a stretch cluster, and just to kind of cover this a little bit going backwards, but when we look at just a stretch cluster without Site Recovery Manager on top of it, the way that we're going to handle recovery of VMs if we lose one of these sites is through vSphere HA. And as of vSphere 6.5, HA does support some level of automation in that. So you have the ability to set priority groups and dependencies and things like that in terms of how you're recovering your VMs. But with a stretch cluster by itself, you don't have that ability to non-disruptively test. The only way to test if you're talking about a stretch cluster standalone is actually taking one of your sites offline, including bringing all those VMs down hard, and letting HA recover those VMs at the other site, which is obviously going to be disruptive. So that kind of really quick covers how stretch clusters integrate with Site Recovery Manager. So the next thing is where does vSAN fit into all of this? So with vSAN provides a stretched storage capability as well. vSAN has the ability to provide that stretched storage between two sites. Excuse me. And as with most things with vSAN, it's easier to do, it's less complex, and it's less costly than a traditional stretch storage solution. The only additional component to a vSAN stretched environment compared with a traditional one is we add this third component of a witness. Excuse me, I apologize. My throat is just not quite not quite up to speed. But anyway, let's keep going. So with vSAN, we add this third component, this witness site. And the idea here, and really with most stretch storage solutions, you're going to have something similar. You're going to have some kind of a third site that is going to handle things in the case of a split brain scenario where the connection between these two sites goes down. We lose that connectivity. Oh, I apologize. And we need some way to make sure that we know which site is the right one to take over. And that's what this third site does. The additional benefit that we have is this third site can act as a third site for oh, excuse me. This third site, thank you so much. Just a second. Okay. This third site can act as a place for an additional failover domain. So we could set up Site Recovery Manager between this third site and treat our two stretch cluster sites as a combined single site and use Site Recovery Manager to fail over here. And that just gives us that third level of availability. So if we have a small disaster that only impacts one of these sites, we recover at the other one. And if we have a larger scale thing that impacts both of them, we're able to recover at our third site. So that kind of concludes my presentation to this point. Anita, do we have any questions up to now?
We do. So we have a question, and someone's asking, how do we create a policy in vSAN?
How do we create a policy
in vSAN?
So how do you create a policy within vSAN? Creating a policy within vSAN is really the same as creating a policy, any kind of storage policy. The storage policy tool is just built into the vSphere client. We've got walkthrough demos online that'll walk you through exactly how you go through the process of creating a storage policy. Anything else?
So far, no other questions.
Okay. Well, some of the other things that, what are some other things that come up when we start talking about stretch clusters and vSAN? So, one thing that people often ask is, what places can I run this this witness appliance, or what, maybe a little bit more detail about what is the witness appliance. So the witness appliance is it's actually a vSphere host, and it can either be a physical vSphere host, or we provide an actual appliance, an OVA, that you can deploy. And this can be deployed at you definitely don't want to deploy it at either of these two sites. It needs to be a third site, some third place that's independent from these two. And the idea there is that the witness appliance can just needs to be at an independent site. It can be deployed within vCloud Air. We have some scripts online that show how to do that. Can be, any kind of place where you can deploy, where you can run a host that's supported, you can do that. And then the connectivity requirements to that the witness site are a whole lot less than they are between the two data sites, because all we're replicating there is the metadata. Okay.
We have another question. Can you replicate to site B and site C at the same time and on the same VM?
Okay, can you replicate to site B and site C at the same time on the same VM? So it just depends on which way we're talking about it. So if we're looking at a stretch cluster, so a vSAN stretch cluster would basically support that scenario, because this storage at the two sites, and whether we're talking about a vSAN stretch cluster or we're talking about some other kind of stretch cluster solution, apologies. Okay, so whether we're talking about a vSAN stretch cluster or any other kind of stretch cluster solution, we're replicating that VM to the other site. So we already have that single replica of that VM. We're replicating it, the VM's running at site A, we're replicating it to site B. Then we could add Site Recovery Manager into this, or even just vSphere replication, excuse me, and replicate this VM from site B to site C. So hopefully that answers that question, yes. Any other questions?
No major questions.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for your time. I apologize for coughing in your ear so much. All the earlier walkthroughs that I did of this, I didn't have that problem, but that's the way it goes. So thank you, and have a great day.